Hi, this is Kevin with Map Practical, and this is the Intro to GIS class, Lab 4. So today we're going to be working on making a base map. All right. So I give you some data. If we take a quick look in our folder here, let's see what I got. Yep, there we go. So in my labs, I got my Intro GIS Lab 4. I gave you a folder. It's got fedlands, highways, Missoula lakes, Missoula rivers, and the states. So 5 pieces of data. And then the first thing I have you do in the lab is head on over to a website. So this is the Montana State Clearinghouse for geographic information. You click on that, it brings you to this web page right here. And then I tell you just to type in counties and search, and it'll bring up a list, and then Montana county boundaries right there. So if we just click on that guy, it'll take you to the next page, and then data download, and we'll download this data. It does take us then to an FTP site, and you have to actually grab Montana County's zip. You don't want to grab the one above it as zip because that's a geodatabase. So we're just going to get the raw shapefile, and we're going to put it into downloads, or you can put it right into your folder for this week's lab if you want to. So into the raw data. So it's just going to be a zip that goes in there. We'll save that. It comes in pretty fast. And then we're done here, and we're going to go back to this website, and we're going to type in, actually go back one more, here we go, and we're going to type in cities. That should bring something up, and so what you'll come up with is Montana towns. That's the one I want you to download right there. So when you click on that, it should take you to the Montana towns page, and then download data. And then it should come in as Towns 2013 zip. And so we'll save that guy. All right, so then we're done with this web browser. And the instructions, we'll just move those over here so I can follow them. And let's go into our folder. So we've got these 2 zips. Let's unzip these guys. So I'm just going to go 7-zip, extract 2, and that'll put it in a folder called Montana Counties. And then the town, same thing, right click, 7-zip, extract 2. If you're using pzip or something like that, that's fine as well. So let's just take a look and make sure those work. So there's the county, yep, so there's the shapefile right there, and then towns, and there's some shapefiles right there. When we look at them in our catalog, I'll show you there's some slight differences and some things we need to be aware of. So we don't need these zip files anymore. So there we go. So now we have a clean set of raw data, the instructions all set up and ready to go. Let's pull up our catalog. All right, so here we are in our catalog. I've got a folder connection to my Intro GIS folder and then my labs folder, and now I can see all the work I've been doing all semester, and here's lab 4. So if I take a look at my raw data, I've got my fedlands, right? I've got my highways. If you take a look at the highways and preview it, you'll notice real quick, it's a pretty big data set. So that's highways for the whole United States, all the way up into Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. That's obviously going to be more than we need, so we'll be definitely doing some clipping of data. Montana counties. So we don't want the county lines, because those are the lines in between. What we want is the county polygons. So that's that one. So we can, if we want to, just to get rid of the confusion. So right click on this guy. Probably best to just have it on contents. Right click and say delete. And that way we don't make any mistakes. And same thing with the towns. We go into towns here. And if we take a look at the preview, there's areas. So these are the incorporated areas of towns in Montana. What we want are the actual points. So we're going to get rid of those. Get rid of those areas and just keep the points. All right. And then while we're here, maybe it's a good idea to take a look at the properties of one of these guys. So this one's in NAT 83 state plane. Some of them might be just in NAT 83. It's always a good idea to look at the coordinate system and spatial reference on all of your data. But I know that for this lab, I'm going to need to make a geodatabase. So I'm going to right click, not in my raw data folder, but in my Intro GIS Lab 4 folder, say new, file geodatabase. Name it something like my last name, and then underscore lab 4, right? That's great. And then we're going to make a featured data set in there, just like we do every week, okay? So let me just make sure I'm following the instructions nice and cleanly. I don't want to confuse anybody. I'll right click on my geodatabase, new, featured data set. I'm going to call this one Montana data, I think is what I asked you guys to do, yep. Underscore data. And since we're going to be mapping Missoula County and the state of Montana, WGS 84 probably isn't the best choice for a coordinate system. You can probably guess what it's going to be. It's going to be something along the lines of NAT 83 for North America. So USA and territories, just plain old NAT 83, none of the other variants. And we'll go with the defaults. And so now we have this guy, so we can right click on that and say import, feature class multiple. And this little window will come up, and then let's just look at our raw data. So let's get the fed lands and drag those guys in. Highways, drag those in. Montana counties, the polygons is what you want. Grab the lakes of MSO, the rivers of Missoula, the states for the whole United States, and then the towns, and we want the points. Okay, and we'll just let that rip. It might take a little bit. That's quite a bit of data. I'll get a sip of coffee. Oh, crunching along, crunching along. Now we're getting into some real GIS where we're crunching data. There we go. Now it's making some progress, getting close. Excellent. So the way that I have this little pop-up tool is that I went inside my customize, actually geoprocessing, and then geoprocessing options, and I unchecked this background processing. If that's checked and it says enable that, then you'll just get the scroll bar down here as it works, but sometimes that thing disappears and you don't know what's going on with your data. I like a tool that pops up and tells me what's happening. So we're actually done with the raw data now. We have the data that we need. Take a look inside our feature data set. It has everything we need for this project. Great. We are ready to go to ArcMap. So I'm going to go up here and click on the little ArcMap launch icon and get a new document going. We're going to start with a blank ArcMap, and we're going to set the Lab 4 Geodatabase to be our default. So it's going to be under my labs, Lab 4 GDB, and say OK. And while we're here, we might as well go to File, Map Document Properties, and check the little box to store relative path names. That'll make sure it can always find the data. Say OK. And then in the instructions, I tell you to only add 2 pieces of data to start. So let's do that. And that's the states and the Montana counties. So I'm going to go to Add Data. You'll be able to see your geodatabase, Montana data, and I'm going to add just the states and the counties. And I can hold down my control just to select those 2. Don't add everything because it's just going to make your map a mess and it's going to make it hard for you to understand what's going on. So here we go. You can't see the counties because the states are over the top of them. So if I lift those above, there you go. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create data. We want an outline of Missoula County and we want an outline of the state of Missoula, right? But we don't have those right now. So I'm going to turn off counties to start. And out of the United States, we want just the state of Montana. So if I open up the attribute tables for states, all right, and then from this drop down on the table up here, we're going to do a search. So we're going to do select by attributes. And in this little search window right here, state name, so we double click on it, it shows up down there. We hit equals, and then get unique values, it goes through them all. Now you could type it in if you know, but building it is probably safer because you have to have the perfect syntax, including these single quotes. So I'm going to go down and find Montana. Boom, Montana. And then if you hit verify, it'll let you know if the expression was good. Cool. And if I hit apply, you'll see 1 out of 51 is selected now. Down here, I can look at show all records or just show the selected records. So there's Montana selected, and it is selected on screen. I can close the attribute table, and there we go. Now I can export out just that selected feature and create data. So I'm going to right-click on states, go down to data, export data. I'm going to navigate to my geodatabase. So I'll hit the home geodatabase, go inside my Montana data, and I'm going to call this Montana. There you go. Pretty self-explanatory, and hit save, and then OK. And you can see right here, what's it going to export? It's going to export the selected features. That's the default. The drop-down would be all features or whatever's in the view extent, but we want the selected features. Okay, we say OK, yes, I want to add that to the map, and boom, there we go. Up here, There it is. So that's a selection tool. That's a clear selected features tool. So we'll click on that. Now it's deselected. And now we can zoom into Montana. You can right click on something and say zoom to layer, and there we go. I don't need the states anymore, so I can just remove those. Cool. And put the counties on top again, and now we play the same game with the counties. So I could go into the attribute table. If I hold down the control and double click a layer, it brings the attribute table right up. And then I could do another select by attributes, but I can also do this right on screen. So if I get my little selection tool right here, select features, and just click on Missoula County, oh, it's getting everything. I think it's getting Montana too. So I'll clear, and I'm going to turn Montana off. There we go. So now I just have Missoula County selected. So now I can export that. Data, export data, navigate to our Geodatabase, and this is going to be Missoula County. So _CO. All right. And say OK. Yes, I want to add it. And there we go. There we have it. So go ahead and clear the selection. Now I've got everything I need to make my little map. So I'm going to turn off counties for now and then turn the state back on. So I've got Missoula County and the state of Missoula highlighted. Let's change these colors. These are kind of gross colors. How about a little beige for Missoula and something not sky blue for Montana, even though we have the big sky up here. How about like kind of a rust red? That's not bad. But then there's another problem, right? This isn't projected. So now would be a good time to project this guy. So I'm going to go to my layer properties here, and I'm going to go over to my coordinate system. And what we're going to do, instead of just having it in NAD83, we're going to put this into Montana State Plane. So we're going to go to Projected Coordinate Systems, State Plane, just plain old NAD83 feet, if I can find it. There it is, NAD83, and then scroll down until you find Montana. And there we are. Say OK. Looking a little bit better. And then the last thing we need to do is just label Missoula County, and that should be pretty easy. If we just turn on the label features, it did grab Missoula, and it could probably be a little bit bigger, so we would double click, go to the properties, and then the label tab, and you can see right now it's being labeled in Arial and 8-point font. Remember, Arial is always the default. If you want to make your maps look better, choose something different. You have to get in here and actually figure out what you want. You know, you can start to type things in here too. Let's see, I think I have Helvetica. Oh yeah. You might not have that on your computer, but I'm going to go with a bold, and I'm going to make it like 14. That might be too big. Let's try 12. There we go. So there's Missoula County. This is pretty much the first part of your map is done now. So it's a good time to save. So we'll do a file and save. And this is going to go not into lab 3, but into lab 4. And this is going to be McManigal lab 4. Right? And it'll automatically add the MXD to it if you just hit save. And there we go. So we have our MXD. Okay, let me check and make sure I haven't missed anything. We've got it. Missoula County. All right, so we're ready to go. So at this point, we've got one data frame, basically layers right here. I'm going to change the name of this guy and call this, and you could do it on the general tab right here, and just call this Montana, sorry. So this is the state of Montana. So this is our locator map for Montana, and say OK. Now I'm going to go to layout view. So there we go. So we got this one data frame with the state of Montana. I'm going to change this up and put this guy up here. This is our locator map, and I can put some half-inch guides just to help us. 10 and a half inch there, and put that guy up in the corner. All right, and that's about where we want it, but it's going to be, you have to zoom the layer on the state of Montana so it fits in there. That's our locator map for Missoula within the state of Montana. And now we're going to add another data frame. So you go to Insert, Data Frame, and boom, you have a new data frame. There's nothing in it yet, but you can see it just showed up down here. And that is going to be roughly 2/3 of the map down here. And this is where we're going to have our main map of Missoula County. All right, so let's go ahead and copy, and then right click on this new data frame and paste, and it just pasted Missoula County in. You see anything strange though, it's not projected, so we have to do that all over again. And while we're here, we're going to call this data frame Missoula CO, so Missoula County, okay? And then we need to project it. Coordinate systems, Again, we're going to go to projected, state plane, NAD 83. Wait a second, where are we at? Projected coordinate systems. Let's see, I gotta find it here. I'm doing state systems versus state plane, that's why I couldn't find it. And I'm going to go into US feet and then back down to Montana again. There we go. All right, but you notice that Missoula is a little bit off to the side, right? And that's because state plane has a central meridian in the middle of the state and it's on a conic projection, so Missoula gets a little bit of a curve to it, right? It's a little bit off kilter. We can fix that by setting a new central meridian. Let me just get into the instructions and make sure I'm doing it right. Yep. Okay, so when you hover over the center of Missoula, you'll notice that down here there are decimal degrees, right? And so what's about the center of Missoula County? It's about -114. So if we go back to Missoula County, data frame properties, and then right here on the projection, right click and say copy and modify, and then we just need to modify this central meridian to what we just figured out the longitude was, -114, right? And then I will always throw a mod on this so that I know that it's a modified projection. Say OK, and watch what happens when I hit apply. Boom, now Missoula is straight up and down. Great, I'm going to right click on Missoula County and don't label that feature. All right, save. All right, now we have our two data frames. We're all set up, right, in our layout view. At this point, when you're working with two data frames, it's probably best just to stay in layout view because then you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on. Okay, so now we need to add some extra layers. So let's add to Missoula County, and it's highlighted because it is, bold right here. And I'm going to go ahead and add data, and I'm going to add my highways and say okay. Boom, and there you go. So now you see though that the highways are going outside of Missoula County, and that's to be expected because we have a highway network that's the whole United States, all right? So in order for us just to clip this so you don't see the highways anywhere else but in Missoula County, I'm going to go ahead and go in the data frame properties, and then on the general tab here, not on the general tab, it's on the data frame tab. Under clip options, I'm going to tell it clip to shape, and then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to specify an outline of the features, and that's going to be Missoula County. So I want to clip the highways by Missoula County. And if I go into exclude layers and tell it don't clip itself, so exclude Missoula County, then I'll still have a nice clean border, and I'll hit OK. And there we go. So now you can see that we have the highways clipped just to the county. Those highways still exist in the database. All right, I haven't actually cut them or changed them in any way. All right. So now let's go ahead and add the rest of our layers. So we're going to need fed lands. We're going to need lakes, rivers, and towns. Okay, I don't need to add Missoula County again. I don't need the states or any of that. We just need these new layers inside of here. Okay, very good. And then you might have to kind of go through and clean these up a little bit, right? So fed lands is probably going to be at the bottom, just above Missoula County. Lakes right there, rivers, probably, let's put rivers underneath our lakes, highways, and then towns. I'm going to turn off towns, turn off highways. I'm going to fix my lakes, give them like just a blue fill with no stroke. And then I'm going to fix my rivers too so that they're blue. And I can make that same nice blue color. There we go. So there's our rivers, and you can darken them up, whatever you want to do. Maybe I will go a little bit darker. So I'm going to choose that blue for my rivers, and I'm going to do the same thing, choose the other blue for my lakes. Those show up on screen a little bit better. There we go. All right. And just have to remember that we didn't actually clip any of this data, right? So there's still a lot of data in the background that's taking up resources, right? So we want to turn on the clipping features right now, but at some point we will actually clip and use a clip tool to cut the data like it's a cookie cutter so that we don't have so much data in the background that's using up the resources. All right, let me just make sure I'm all set up in the instructions and giving you guys the right deal. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is some labeling. And as I mentioned in our lectures, there's two label engines inside of Arc. If we go into the Missoula County properties again, and then on the General tab, you'll see that down here the label engine is the default is the standard label engine. It doesn't work great. Let's go ahead and always use Maplex when we want to do labels. So we'll just change that, and now we can change some labels on our map. I'm going to turn off the fedlands for a second, and even turn off the rivers and the lakes, and then just the highways. So we're going to work with highways for a minute, okay? I'm going to make my highways like a nice red right there. There we go. And what we want to do is create labels that are the highway shields for each one of these guys. So if I were to just turn on labels right now, what you get is the numbers of all these different shields, and they're all over the place and they look really messy. So we're going to have to go in and fix that, okay? So let's go into the actual properties for this guy on the label tab. And the checkbox to label features is already checked because I turned that on before, but if you hadn't, you might have to turn it on. And then we're going to tell it to define classes. So you can, if you're just labeling from one attribute column, label all the features the same way. You would just choose what they are right here, and then choose the different font size and color. But if you want to have different labels from the same attribute table, you need to define classes. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my default class. I'm going to add a class, and I'm going to call this one Interstate. Okay, so this is our Interstate class. I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to have to do an SQL query. So I'm going to click on this one, and this guy is going to be pre-type, and then equals, and then get unique values. And what we're looking for is I for interstate. So if we scroll down until we find that, there it is. And it was nice to verify it. Super. And then say OK. So now we have an SQL query that tells it only grab from the interstate value. And then for this label expression right here, we want to choose highway number, because that's going to be the number that goes on the shield. And then for our shield, what we're going to do is go under symbol right here, okay? We're going to go down and find the interstate shield. There it is, US Interstates, okay? And then under placement properties, under this label position, instead of this kind of straight, we're going to go to this position and tell it horizontal. So centered horizontal will be right over the road. Okay, let's take a look at that. So if you hit apply, it's kind of like preview. So there we go. We've got some shields on the 90 freeway. Great. Now it's probably too many and they're too close together, but that's okay. Everything you label inside of ArcMap affects all the other labels. So let's set up our other shields first, and then we'll be able to adjust how many of them we have, okay? All right, so we'll deal with removing duplicates in a second too. So we're going to make two more classes. We're going to add another class, and that first one is going to be, what is it? Federal routes, right? So this is going to be our Fed routes, our TS. Okay, so this is a totally new class. We're going to have to make a new SUL query. It remembers the old one, so let's clear that and go pretype equals, and in this case the federal routes are designated under pretype as US. So US, verify it, does like it. Super. And then we need to change the shield. We're going to go for the federal shield for these guys. There it is, US routes. Super. And placement properties, it probably will remember what we had before. Great. So let's go ahead and just hit apply and see what we get. So there's some feds, and you see how that moved the 90s? Great. So let's not worry about where they are yet until we finish our last class, which is going to be our state routes. And OK, and then a new SQL query, and it's going to be clear again, pretype equals, boom, and in this case it's going to be SR for state route. So we'll just go back up, there we go, SR, and see if it likes it, verify, super, OK, and hit apply. All right, oh, we didn't change the actual symbol. Let's go in and change that because it looks the same as the Fed. So the state route symbol is just the circle. There we go, state routes, and hit apply. There we go. So we've got the 200 going up the Blackfoot, the 83 up into the Sealy Swan. We still have too many of these federals and maybe not enough spacing on the 90s, and so now we can go in and fix that. So what I'm going to do is go back to my interstate, and then under placement properties again, I'm going to go over to density, label density, and hit this remove duplicates, And under options, I'm going to try something like 1, and points is more like a size of a font. Let's go with inches. Say OK. Say OK and hit apply. So that's not too bad. Now we know how to do the same thing for the feds. Let's go to the fed routes and placement properties, same thing, remove duplicates, options 1, and we'll try inches. And we'll hit apply. See how I keep hitting apply, it's like preview. Okay, so it's still a little bit tight in here, but as soon as we add some labels to our cities and stuff, it's going to change as well. All right, so let's not worry too much about that right now at the moment, and we can always get back in here and change these if we need to. All right, so we've got some label shields now. Great, I'm going to save. It's always a good idea to save and have a sip of coffee, because it's always a good idea to have a sip of coffee. All right. Great, so now I want to do my towns. Problem is we know that there are many, many towns outside of what's being clipped by the outline of Missoula County. So we're now going to actually clip towns to Missoula County. So under search, I'm going to just type in clip. So instead of just masking out the towns, we're going to be doing it as a cookie cutter and make new data. So clip analysis, I'm going to put my towns in there, and then my clip features are going to be Missoula County. So Missoula County becomes the cookie cutter, all right? And then we need to put it into our Geodatabase inside of our Montana data. And this could be, you could call it something like, Missoula County towns. So let's call it, I'm going to call it Zoo Towns. So those are just the ones inside of Missoula County. Great, and say OK. And there we go. And so now they're on top. Now I don't need my towns 2013. I can actually just remove that. So now the attribute table is going to be much smaller. So these are just the towns inside of Missoula. But it's still a little bit busy, right? So if we take a look at the map, we've still got quite a few towns, probably more than we need. I'm going to change this to a better symbol for our towns. How about something a little bit bigger? There we go. All right. So we can reduce the overall number of towns again if we want to, right? There's still probably too many. So let's do a definition query on this guy. So I'm going to go to Missoula Towns, do a definition query, and under the query builder in here, I'm going to look at population 2010, so population, and I'm going to do greater than or equal to, and then I'm just going to type in 1,000. So we're only going to have towns show up that are greater than 1,000 in population. Say OK. And now, that cleaned it up quite a bit. So now if I turn the labels on and apply and see what we get. So there we go. So now we've got Frenchtown, Seeley Lake, Missoula. So I want to change that. So I don't want to go with Ariel. Maybe I will try, well, I'm just a sucker for a little Helvetica. So we'll go with some Helvetica. And 8 point is fine. Maybe we'll go up a little bit to 9. And it's not going to be bold this time. We'll hit apply, see what we got there. All right, so that's a little bit cleaner, and maybe bold, just so it's cleaner. And then I want to make Missoula, since Missoula is kind of the most important town, I want to make it bigger. How would I do that, right? Well, that's interesting. That's kind of a problem of, well, if I wanted Missoula to be bigger, I could make label classes just for Missoula. That's one way I could do it. Or I could select Missoula out and export out just one single point that is Missoula. But let's just do it with label classes. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and define classes. The default class is everything else. I'm going to add one and just call it Missoula. Great. And then I'm going to do an SQL query where name equals Missoula. Verify it likes it, say OK, and hit apply. All right, so now we have 2 Missoulas though, and that's a problem, right? So it's labeling it twice, but it's good because I can go ahead and change the size of this thing. Great, and I'm going to make that bigger, like an 11, super and bold. But what we need to do is tell the default class not to label Missoula. So there's Missoula in bold, but let's go ahead and go back to my default class, and we'll do an SQL query right there, and we'll tell it name does not equal, and these double brackets equal do not equal Missoula. Okay, and apply that, and there we go. So now Missoula is not being labeled twice, and because it's a little bit busy in here, and watch if we zoom in, I'll do that in a second. I'm going to go into the placement properties for Missoula, and under this symbol, I'm going to go edit symbol, and then I'm going to go to mask, and I'm going to add a little halo, and it's just going to be a little white halo around Missoula. And say OK, and apply. And now it's gone completely. I think I probably need to tell it that that one has to be placed. So there's no remove duplicates. Think never remove. So we're going to tell Missoula to never remove. There we go. So now we have Missoula. And so if I hit OK and I zoom in, you'll see that things can change sometimes, right? So labels will move around. They'll do different things, right? And as we label different stuff, it's going to always affect all the other labels. So let's go ahead and label the other things on the map and see how it looks before we spend too much time trying to get this perfect. The last thing I want you guys to do is turn on your Fedlands, right? And I'm going to go ahead, we can turn on our rivers too. And I'm going to go into my properties for my Fedlands, and under the symbology, instead of just a single symbol here, I'm going to go to categories, and then I'm going to take a look at name 1 and tell it to add all values. And it's going to try and add all 500. Now that's okay. We're only going to see the ones within Missoula County. But I am going to change it to a more foresty type of color. There we go. I'm going to turn off these all others and hit apply. There we go. And so now we have a much better look for our forests, right? And it made a huge list, but I can just minimize that over here. And what if I wanted to label those federal lands? I could just turn them on and see what happens. Okay, not too bad. We have some duplicates, so we might have to go in there and change some things up on our labels tab. Under placement properties, we're going to do label density, remove duplicates every 1 inch again, and see how that goes. Super. And label position, horizontal in the middle of it, stacked label is okay. I don't mind that. But I will, I think, change this thing to a different font. Oops, we don't want any of these Esri symbol fonts. A lot of them in there, you can see, right? Let's go with a Franklin Gothic. That's nice. And I will make that a bold. And then I'm going to go under my symbol here, and then under my edit symbol, and I'm going to tell this guy to do all caps. So these will be all capital letters for the names of my forests, just to give it another look, another label design. What if I hit apply now? There we go, not too bad. So to get it to label Rattlesnake Wilderness gets a little bit tricky. You might have to really work hard at that. Probably what's even easier than doing that is just to go up to your Customize, Toolbars, and get your Draw bar. And once you have this bar, then you can add your own labels, right? So you can easily hit this little text guy and then click right here and go ahead and write Rattlesnake Wilderness and then change it to the same font style that you have for your other ones, right? Makes it pretty simple. You could play around for a long time trying to clean these up. So it's the same with the rivers. So if you wanted to label these rivers, you could spend a lot of time working on those, right? Or we could just do it from within this draw toolbar. I only want you to label 3. I just want you to label the Blackfoot, the Clark Fork, and the Bitterroot. So if I was going to do that, I might try and use this spline text tool right here. And so you click once, and then you click again and make a little bit of a curve, and then double click, and then I'm going to call this the Clark Fork River, right? And then hit enter. And it's just in black right now. We don't want that, so I'm going to click on it and then right click and go to properties. And then under this symbol right here, there is a symbol already made up for rivers in here. And there we go. I'm going to use that one. Great. And then I can move this guy around to where I want it, and I can even use this little rotate tool up here on my draw to get it to match the river just fine. All right. Move it down. Super, so there's my Clark Fork River, and now I can make one of those for the Bitterroot River and one for the Blackfoot River. And then you're pretty close to being finished with your map, right? At this point, let's zoom out, take a look at the full page. I'm just going to dock my draw bar up here. Save, always save. And you've got space up here for your titles, so you can insert title, Missoula County. Oop, got an extra something in there. There we go. Missoula County. Boom. I would definitely change that font, right? And then I would throw Montana as a subtitle underneath it, right? And then you could have your name. A scale bar would be good. The scale bar always belongs attached to the main map. So you want to highlight that data frame. Go up to Insert, Scale Bar. I'm just going to pick a nice simple one. Boom, came in at 20 miles. Well, that was sure handy, right? And you can use your arrow keys to kind of just move it up a little bit, and there's modifiers with Shift, move it in little increments, or Control, move it in bigger increments. And that's just because it's snapping to the guides. All right, and that makes it hard. And then you definitely want to have some projection information, especially since you modified your projection. So I'm going to do Insert, Dynamic Text, and then Coordinate System. And it gives you all this data. This is probably a little bit too much, right? So we're going to reduce the overall complexity of this guy by right-clicking on it and say Convert to Graphics. And that way it's just a text box. And now we can go in and edit it. So we don't need to tell the audience when things are their normal standard defaults. So we don't need the US foot, the latitude, origin. We are going to keep this central meridian though, because we changed that, right? We don't need this false easting northing. We already told it that it's nat 83 once. Anybody who knows State Plane, Montana could look it up and find out that it's the Lambert conformal conic projection. So what we are going to do is just call this thing projection. And it's going to be nat 83, State Plane, Montana. And I'm just going to say modified. Great, and then that central meridian is the one thing you modified, so we want to keep that. We definitely don't need decimal places to the 4th degree in zeros, so we'll just go with -114, and now this is a much easier, cleaner thing to fit in to our layout. Okay? Save, add your information, right? So if you need to stack this, you can go in and clean it up, or maybe it'd be better to place this down below or something like that. That could work, right? And add your information, scale bar we already have. What about a north arrow? Well, remember the north arrow is only going to be correct right up the middle. So if you are going to put a north arrow in, it's going to have to be right in the middle of this projection, right where the central meridian is, right? And there you have it. So that's pretty much all that we have to do for this lab. Take some time, play with it, get it to look the way you want. And if you have questions, then by all means hit me up. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you find this helpful. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good day.